Gary and Becky Walker walked into the doors of Mount Scott in the mid-90s, about the same time that Fred and I did. Gary has been instrumental over the years in helping the church communicate well when we've hit difficult times. But Gary Walker has a day job too, we like to joke about, and he happens to be the Director of Communications for Providence Healthcare here in the Northwest. We asked Gary if we could interview him a little bit to ask him a few questions about how this global pandemic has affected him, and he agreed in his busy schedule to take time to do that. Gary, your career is in healthcare communications, really tough industry to be a part of right now. We're hearing a lot about your industry in the news daily, actually hour by hour. But what would you like your church family to know about what's going on, and what would you have us be aware of in your industry?
Well, good morning, church, or good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you're watching this. What I would want you to know is that there are a lot of good people working really hard, really long hours to take care of people, to find a solution for this, to look for ways to contain the spread of the coronavirus, and you can be reassured about that. I think a lot of times when we look on social media, or we're watching the news, reading up on what's going on, it's easy to get discouraged, and I would say do not be discouraged, because there are good people and smart people working this problem really hard.
Gary, we're being told to stay at home and to shelter in place. How can we help when we're being told to stay at home?
You're going to laugh, but one of the best ways you can help is stay home as much as possible. It's been discouraging to see the number of people out on the streets when you look at some of the bigger cities back east. Saw some scenes from New York where it was almost like business as usual in a park in Queens. Staying home is going to help, here come those words again, bend the curve and keep this from spreading. So we need to make sure that we're doing that. We need to limit our trips. We need to go out only when it's necessary. And the other way to help is to check in with your neighbor, check in with your friend at church. See who needs what, because this is a time where we have a lot of good virtual connections and not much face-to-face connection. So the more of that we can provide, and you don't have to wait for somebody else to do it. Pick up the phone, call somebody, figure out how to use your video chat on your phone, whether it's FaceTime or the Android equivalent. Just figure out how to do that. I think you'll find that is incredibly helpful. Two other things. Wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. It really is effective. And then coughing is not this, it's this. Same thing with sneezes, cover them into here. And if we do that, we are minimizing the chance that we will be spreading the virus. Because I think the other thing that folks might not understand, I can seem perfectly healthy, but I can still be shedding virus that would affect somebody like Becky, who's shooting this video right now, who's got a compromised immune system. So I need to be alert and careful so that I'm protecting the people around me and the people I love most. Becky.
Would you share with us maybe a positive that you're seeing come out of this pressure cooker time in healthcare? Do you see any hope on the horizon of something that, because of what we're walking through right now, will one day benefit the public?
You're going to think this is funny. I see so many positives coming out of this. Becky and I were just talking this morning about, isn't it interesting that God's timing had this occur during Lent? You don't have to worry much about what you're going to give up for Lent, because we pretty much gave up most everything. So it's really interesting to see God at work through all this. Other positives, you know, it would be less than honest if we haven't had a couple of times, I didn't tell you, we have had a couple of times over the past year where we've thought, gosh, our family life is happening down in Texas. Are we in the wrong place? But I have to tell you, there are so many ways that God's affirming. We get to see, Andrew is teaching his youth group virtually, and Chelsea has sessions going for toddlers and for children. Andrew was teaching the other day in the verse that talks about loving your parents.
And we're going to look at Ephesians chapter 6, verses 1 through 3. And it says this, and parents are going to love this part.
And all of a sudden on the screen on Facebook, all these little hearts start popping up. The parents are watching the lesson and they're going, yes, love your parents, respect your parents. It was funny to watch. Andrew cracks up when he sees the hearts come flying by. And then Chelsea had an incredible moment where the story she was telling kids got to a mom who shared it with another mom, who shared it with her child. They fell into a conversation, and that child made a decision for Jesus. And as Chelsea said, nothing to do with her, but this was available. They weren't doing these stories before this time. So that has been terrific. Becky gets to play with Jane virtually for hours at a time and make up stories, and we get to see Nora. We'll talk about Nora more in a little bit, but there's an incredible connection that comes off. Look, if you can't find a Bible study right now, you weren't looking hard enough. I have never seen so many teachings and studies available. I just think there's going to be a real benefit to all of this. Okay, so two more stories. Personally, a positive out of this, and I'm going to save this full story for when we come back together as a church, and I'm going to talk about it on Sunday morning. So you'll want to be in class when we come back together, because I will tell the full version of this story. But I got a message from someone who was having trouble navigating the healthcare system, and I was able to place a couple of phone calls, and God had me up at 3 a.m. At the same time, this guy was up at 3 a.m. looking for help. And because we were both available, we were able to sort through this, and it really made a life-saving difference in the life of this guy, and more importantly, his wife, who's the patient. I will tell more of that story later, because it's terrific. That God had me up at 3 a.m. when my friend was up at 3 a.m. You just have to say it's a God deal, right? You absolutely do. Here's the second thing. Middle of March, our lab folks at the health system where I work found a way to process tests for COVID-19 faster. And they have a machine in there. It's big and it's blue on the inside. Because it's big and blue, they call it Sully, like the character in Monsters, Inc. Well, Sully can process 500 tests a day. And the testing in Oregon shot through the roof when we were able to bring that online. So we're over there, and I got to see some of the first tests getting processed. People were going to start getting answers faster because the turnaround time was running 1 to 2 weeks, and we're able to do it in 1 to 3 days, sometimes same day. And to see all these chemists and molecular biologists jumping around like they just won the NBA title, it was terrific. And what a privilege to get to see that. You know, I don't know that lab work has that kind of excitement going on every day. They were so excited. There are no shortage of positives. I think we just have to be looking for the God deals that come out of all this. What to be looking for? Well, if you haven't heard already, you will hear about work that's being done on a vaccine, and the work is being done right here in Portland by the people who are doing cancer research. A key part of cancer research is immunotherapy. immunotherapy, in effect, tricks your body into fighting the cancer cells off. It uses your own body's immune system to fight off cancer. So the smart kids in that room said, well, what if we took this approach we're using to cancer and applied it to COVID-19? That's what they're working on. And you'll be hearing more about that in the days to come. There are trials being done right now in our local hospitals to help treat the symptoms for this. So there's work being done at an incredibly rapid pace to find solutions for this. So be praying that people are learning what they need to learn, adapting what they need to adapt, and fixing what they need to fix to make both the medications to treat the symptoms and the vaccines that we're going to need to keep this from breaking out again.
Personally, Gary, I know that you and Becky were scheduled to fly to Texas over Easter. You not only have 2 adult children active in ministry positions there and their spouses, you also have 2 adorable granddaughters, one whom you have not even yet seen in person. And I know how much you and Becky were looking forward to that. How have you here in Oregon and how have your kids in Texas all been handling that kind of disappointment?
Yeah, disappointment. We would have been leaving in about a week to go down and spend Easter with family in Texas. We were watching Call the Midwife the other night, and there's a little baby born and all wrapped up in yellow, and mom gets to hold her, and to no one's surprise, I start crying because I haven't been able to hold Nora yet. And there's a little hole here in my heart and Becky's heart where Nora belongs. And we will talk about this with Nora and say, you know, when Jane was born, we were right there. And we were there and saw Jane within the first hour. But you were special. We had to wait to come meet you, so we got to see you on our phones, and we would talk to you, and we would tell you stories, and we would listen to you make little sounds. So I'm looking forward to that. And it is disappointing, and not going is the right decision. It's the right decision for them. It's the right decision for us. I go back to Philip Yancey. The alternative to disappointment with God is disappointment without Him, and I do remind myself of that. And I'm putting up a pretty good front today, but it's hard. It's hard.
Lastly, I know that these days have been extremely long for you. I'm just going to ask you the question, Gary, what's keeping you sane?
This makes an assumption in the question that I'm saying to begin with. That's it. One of the things that keeps me sane is unplugging. Right now, I'm getting 1 day off a week. And even that gets interrupted. But on that 1 day, I try to disconnect. I turn off the alerts on my phone. And I really try to be present where I am, which is here in the house with Becky. I try to be present. That's my supply seeking day. So when I'm picking stuff up in the stores, I try to make sure that I'm having a real conversation with the people who are waiting on me, because they're on the front lines too. The people keeping the grocery stores open so that we can get in there and get the supplies that we need. Those folks have a big job too. I think one of the other things keeping me sane is the little things. Becky and I the other night made dinner, and just the sense of normal that making zucchini noodles and shrimp for dinner and just the rhythm of doing something normal was terrific. I guess the other thing that I'm learning, look, we talked about the long hours that I'm having to work, but I am not working nearly as hard as the doctors and nurses and housekeepers and the people who are cleaning and preparing things. Those folks are putting in 18-hour days and meeting themselves when they come back in the door following a day's work. Those folks are working hard. And I know for every one of me who's working a lot, there are 10 people, 20 people who would love to be working that much, whose livelihoods are at stake. So I am aware of the difference in that blessing. Here's another thing I'm thinking about. Finding the rhythm in how we do our lives together here at home. It's not easy having me work at home. It's not easy on those days when I have to run into the office to take care of something that has to be taken care of on site. And it's not easy being Becky and being indoors, again, with a compromised immune system. Going to the store is a high-risk move for Becky. And I am trying to be faithful to the call to be a good husband and be aware of that. And I am intermittently successful in that. So I'm learning. It's a time of learning too.
Thanks so much for taking time to answer questions for us and give us a little insight today. Any parting thoughts? Please know that your church family is praying for you and Becky both. Thanks.
That we won't have tough times ahead, but I'm looking forward to one sweet Sunday morning when we're all able to get back together and we can say good morning, church, and we can make bad jokes during the announcements, and we can just be with each other. I am so looking forward to that. And I might be looking forward to a trip to Texas too. All right? Stay home, stay safe, wash your hands, cover your cough. See you soon.